Victoria Chen stood before Judge Morrison, with her arms crossed and a smile that didn't belong in a courtroom. She'd been teaching high school English for 12 years, and in all that time, no one had ever made her back down. Not principals, not angry parents, not school board members, certainly not some judge in a small county courthouse. "Miss Chen, do you understand why you're here today?" Judge Morrison asked, adjusting his glasses. "Oh, I understand perfectly," Victoria said, her voice dripping with condescension. "I'm here because someone decided to waste everyone's time with a frivolous complaint." The judge's eyebrow lifted slightly. "You consider a formal charge of contempt of court frivolous?" Victoria laughed. Actually laughed. Several people in the courtroom shifted uncomfortably. Her lawyer, a young public defender named Marcus Webb, tugged at her sleeve. She shook him off. "With all due respect, Your Honor, this is ridiculous. I have tenure. I have union protection. I've been Teacher of the Year twice. Do you really think missing a few court dates is going to ruin my career?" Judge Morrison set down his pen and leaned forward. "Ms. Chen, you've been subpoenaed 4 times as a witness in a custody case. 4 times you've failed to appear. The court issued warnings. You ignored them. This isn't about your teaching career. The custody case, involving my student. Right?" Victoria waved her hand dismissively. "I already told them everything I know. The mother is clearly the better parent. I don't need to sit in a courtroom and repeat myself." "You told this information to whom?" "The mother's lawyer. We had coffee. I explained everything." Marcus Webb closed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose. Judge Morrison's expression hardened. "Ms. Chen, you were subpoenaed by the father's attorney. You don't get to choose which side you speak to. You don't get to decide whether your testimony is necessary. When this court orders you to appear, you appear." Victoria rolled her eyes. "Look, I'm very busy. I have papers to grade, lesson plans to write, and students who actually need me. I can't just drop everything because some divorced parents can't figure out their lives." The courtroom went silent. Even the court reporter stopped typing for a moment. "You can't just drop everything." Judge Morrison repeated slowly. "That's what I said." "Miss Chen, do you think you're above the law?" Victoria's smile widened. "I think I'm protected by my position. I think you know that touching me professionally would cause a media firestorm. Judge punishes beloved teacher. Can you imagine the headlines? My students adore me. Their parents trust me. The community values me." Marcus Webb stood up. "Your Honor, may I have a moment with my client?" "Sit down, Marcus," Victoria snapped. "I don't need a moment. I need to get back to school." Judge Morrison leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You're that confident?" "I'm that realistic," Victoria said. "We both know how this works. You'll give me a slap on the wrist, maybe a fine, and I'll write a check. Then we all move on with our lives. Is that what you think justice is? A transaction? I think justice is practical. I think judges know when they're outmatched." A few gasps echoed through the courtroom. Marcus Webb looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Judge Morrison picked up his gavel. Victoria's smirk never wavered. "Miss Chen, I'm going to give you one more chance to adjust your attitude and show this court the respect it deserves." "Or what?" Victoria challenged. The judge's fingers tightened around the gavel. "Or you'll discover that no one, regardless of their profession or community standing, is above the law." Victoria laughed again. "We'll see about that." Marcus Webb caught up with Victoria in the courthouse hallway. She was texting on her phone, completely unconcerned. "What the hell was that?" Marcus hissed. "That was me standing my ground," Victoria said without looking up. "You antagonized a judge. In his own courtroom. He's not going to do anything. Trust me." Marcus grabbed her phone, forcing her to look at him. "Victoria, I've been doing this for 3 years. I've never seen anyone treat a contempt hearing like a joke. Judge Morrison is known for being fair, but he doesn't tolerate disrespect." Victoria snatched her phone back. "And I don't tolerate being bullied. I'm a professional, with a spotless record. One judge in one courtroom can't touch me. That's exactly the attitude that's going to destroy you." "Please," Victoria scoffed. "I've dealt with administrators who tried to fire me for giving failing grades. I've faced down parents who threatened to sue because I assigned too much homework. I'm still here. I'm still teaching. Nobody can touch me. Marcus shook his head. This isn't a parent-teacher conference. This is the legal system. The legal system that needs me more than I need it. That custody case, without my testimony, they have nothing. The mother's lawyer told me I'm their star witness. You're supposed to be impartial. I'm impartial. I'm just impartially correct. The mother is the better choice. Victoria checked her watch. I need to get back. I have a fourth period in 40 minutes. The hearing isn't over. Judge Morrison set another date for next week. Then I'll be there next week. Maybe. If I don't have something more important. Victoria. But she was already walking away, her heels clicking against the marble floor, with absolute confidence. Marcus watched her go, a sinking feeling in his stomach. He'd seen arrogance before, but this was different. Victoria wasn't just confident. She genuinely believed she was untouchable. Back in the courtroom, Judge Morrison sat alone at his bench, reviewing his notes. His clerk, Jennifer Park, approached quietly. That was intense, Jennifer said. 12 years on the bench, Judge Morrison replied. I've never seen anything quite like that. What are you going to do? The judge continued writing. I'm going to give her exactly what she's asking for. Which is a lesson in consequences. Jennifer hesitated. She's not wrong about the media attention. If you come down hard on a popular teacher, it could get ugly. Judge Morrison looked up. What's uglier? A judge who enforces the law equally, or a system where people with the right job can ignore court orders? I'm just saying it might be complicated. Justice often is. He signed a document and handed it to her. File this, and make sure Miss Chen's attorney gets a copy. Jennifer read the document, and her eyes widened. You're serious about this? Completely. Victoria returned to Roosevelt High School. Feeling triumphant, she parked in her reserved spot privilege. She'd fought for, and won after threatening to sue for discrimination, when they gave it to the football coach, and strutted into the building. Several students greeted her in the hallway. She high-fived a few, complimented others on their recent essays. This was her domain, her kingdom. Here, she was royalty. Miss Chen, Principal David Warren called from his office. Could I see you for a moment? Victoria checked her watch. I have class in 20 minutes. This won't take long. She sighed dramatically, but entered his office. Warren was sitting behind his desk, looking uncomfortable. Beside him sat Diane Foster, the school district's legal counsel. Victoria's confidence didn't waver. What's this about? I received a call from the county courthouse, Warren said carefully. About your hearing today. And it was nothing. A misunderstanding about some scheduling conflicts. Diane Foster opened a folder. Miss Chen, you've been held in contempt of court. That's not a scheduling conflict. It's being handled. How is it being handled? Warren asked. My lawyer is dealing with it. It's not going to be an issue. Diane leaned forward. Victoria, the district needs to know if you're facing legal problems. Depending on the outcome, it could affect your employment. Victoria's smile turned cold. Are you threatening me? Because I have tenure. I have a union rep who would love to hear about this conversation. Nobody's threatening you, Warren said quickly. We're just concerned. Well, don't be. I've been teaching here for 12 years. I'm the reason our AP English scores are the highest in the county. Parents request me specifically. You're not concerned. You're afraid of losing your best teacher. Diane closed her folder. We're also responsible for ensuring our staff maintains professional conduct both inside and outside school. My conduct is impeccable. Defying a court order suggests otherwise. Victoria stood up. I didn't defy anything. I had scheduling conflicts with a witness subpoena for a custody case. The judge is making a mountain out of a molehill because he's having a power trip. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have students waiting. She left without being dismissed. Warren and Diane exchanged worried looks. She has no idea what she's walking into, Diane said. Should we warn her more explicitly? I don't think she'd listen. In her classroom, Victoria found her students settling into their seats. She immediately launched into a discussion of their current novel study. This was where she thrived, where her sharp intellect and commanding presence made her effective, even if it sometimes crossed into intimidation. "Jamie, your essay on the symbolism was lazy," she said to one student. "You barely scratched the surface." Jamie, a quiet junior, shrank in her seat. "I tried my best." "Your best isn't good enough. See me after class." Another student, Tyler, raised his hand. "Miss Chen, are you okay? You seem kind of stressed." Victoria's expression softened slightly. "I'm fine, Tyler. Just dealing with adult nonsense. Nothing you need to worry about." "Is it true you were in court today?" another student asked. "Who told you that?" "My mom works at the courthouse. She said she saw you there." Victoria waved it off. It was nothing. Just helping with a student's family situation. Sometimes adults make things more complicated than they need to be. The students seemed satisfied with this explanation. But Victoria noticed Jamie staring at her with an odd expression. The girl's parents were the ones in the custody battle, the case that had brought Victoria to court in the first place. After class, as promised, Jamie approached the desk. "Miss Chen, about the custody thing." "Yes? My dad's lawyer said you didn't show up, multiple times." Victoria straightened papers, not meeting the girl's eyes. "Your mother's situation is complicated. I'm trying to help her. But you're supposed to tell the truth, right? Not just help one side." "I am telling the truth. Your mother is the better parent." "How do you know? You've never even met my dad." Victoria's jaw tightened. "I know your mother. I've seen how much she cares about your education. That's enough. But that's not fair. Life isn't fair, Jamie. The sooner you learn that, the better. Now go. I have work to do." Jamie left, tears in her eyes. Victoria felt a flicker of something, guilt, doubt, but pushed it away. She was doing the right thing. She knew it. The following Monday, Victoria arrived at school to find a note in her mailbox. "Report to Principal Warren's office, immediately." She rolled her eyes and made her way there, assuming it was more hand-wringing about the court situation. But when she entered, she found not just Warren and Diane Foster, but also Helen Martinez, the union representative. "Helen, what are you doing here?" Victoria asked. "Sit down, Victoria," Helen said gently. "I'd rather stand." Warren cleared his throat. "Victoria, we received official documentation from the court on Friday afternoon. Judge Morrison has escalated your contempt charge." "Escalated how?" Diane slid papers across the desk. "He's ordered you to appear this Friday. If you fail to appear, or fail to show cause why you shouldn't be held in criminal contempt, he's prepared to issue a bench warrant for your arrest." Victoria's confidence finally flickered. "Arrest? For missing a court date? For repeatedly defying court orders and showing contempt for the judicial process?" Diane corrected. "He can't do that. I'm a teacher. I have responsibilities." Helen spoke up. "Victoria, I've reviewed your case. You've ignored 4 subpoenas. You admitted in open court that you coordinated with one party's attorney while refusing to cooperate with the other. You openly mocked the judge. This is serious." "So what? I'll apologize. I'll show up on Friday." "Problem solved." "I don't think you understand," Warren said. "The district has to consider its position here. If one of our teachers is arrested—" "You're going to fire me." Victoria's voice rose. "I have tenure." "Tenure doesn't protect you from criminal charges," Diane said. "And it certainly doesn't protect you from the consequences of illegal behavior." "I haven't done anything illegal." "Contempt of court is illegal. Obstruction of justice is illegal. Depending on how Judge Morrison proceeds, you could be facing both." Victoria's face flushed red. "This is insane. I'm being persecuted for trying to help a student." "You're being held accountable for ignoring the law," Helen corrected. "And Victoria, as your union rep, I have to tell you we can't help you with this. The union doesn't defend members who willfully violate court orders." The room tilted slightly. For the first time, genuine fear crept into Victoria's chest. What should I do?" "Get a real attorney," Diane said. "Not a public defender, someone who specializes in criminal defense." "Criminal defense? You keep saying criminal. This is—" "It is," Warren interrupted. Judge Morrison's filing explicitly mentions potential criminal contempt charges. Victoria, you pushed too far. Victoria sat down heavily. I was protecting my student. No, Helen said firmly. You were choosing sides in a custody battle. That's not your job. Your job is to teach. When the court asks you to provide factual testimony about a student, you provide it impartially. You don't coordinate with one attorney. You don't skip court dates because you've decided they're inconvenient. But the court will decide what's best for Jamie, not you. Victoria's hands trembled slightly. She clasped them together to hide it. So what happens now? Warren exchanged looks with Diane. For now, you continue teaching. But Victoria, if you're arrested, the district will have no choice but to place you on immediate suspension, pending the outcome of your case. And if I'm convicted, silence. Finally, Diane spoke. Then your employment will be terminated. Tenure or not. Victoria hired an attorney. Actually, she hired the most expensive attorney she could find. Gerald Blackwood, who advertised himself as a courtroom warrior and charged $400 an hour. They met in his downtown office on Wednesday. Blackwood was in his 50s, silver-haired, and carried himself with the kind of confidence Victoria recognized because she'd spent years cultivating it herself. So, Blackwood said after reviewing her case, you really told a judge he was outmatched. I was standing my ground. You were committing professional suicide. He set the papers down. Miss Chen, I'm going to be honest with you. This case is a disaster. Can you fix it? I can try. But you need to understand something. Judge Morrison isn't bluffing. He's known in legal circles as someone who takes contempt very seriously. Last year he held a city councilman in contempt. The guy spent 30 days in jail. Victoria's blood ran cold. Jail? Criminal contempt can carry up to 6 months. And given your behavior in court, your repeated violations, and your complete lack of remorse, you're looking at the upper end of that spectrum. I have remorse. Do you? Because everything I've read suggests you think you're above the law. Victoria opened her mouth, then closed it. Did she think that she'd certainly acted like it? I'm a teacher, she finally said. I've dedicated my life to helping kids. That's nice. It's also irrelevant. The judge doesn't care about your career achievements. He cares that you ignored his court, disrupted a legal proceeding, and showed contempt for the entire judicial process. So what do I do? Blackwood leaned back. Friday. You appear before Judge Morrison. You apologize. Sincerely. You acknowledge that you were wrong. You show genuine remorse. You explain that you understand the seriousness of your actions, and you're prepared to comply with any court orders going forward. And if I do all that, he might show leniency, a fine, community service, maybe a short probation. But Victoria, you need to drop the attitude. Every ounce of arrogance you've shown needs to disappear. You need to be humble, contrite, and respectful. I can do that. Blackwood studied her. Can you? Because I've been doing this for 25 years, and I've met people like you. People who've been in positions of authority so long that they forget what it's like to be accountable. You need to genuinely accept that you were wrong. I was just trying to protect my student. No, you were playing God in a custody case. You decided you knew better than the courts, better than the father, better than everyone. That's not protection. That's arrogance. The word hit Victoria like a slap. Arrogance. Was that what this was? She thought about Jamie's face when she'd asked why Victoria had never met her father. She thought about Marcus Webb's warnings. She thought about the union rep's refusal to defend her. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said quietly. Intent doesn't matter now. Results matter. And the result is that you're facing criminal charges. Blackwood pulled out a notepad. Tell me everything about your interactions with the mother's attorney. Victoria spent the next hour detailing her coffee meetings, her phone conversations, her promise to help the mother win custody. With each revelation, Blackwood's expression grew darker. You realize this could be construed as witness tampering? He said finally. What? No. I was just talking to her lawyer. You were coordinating testimony with one side while refusing to speak to the other. You were allowing your testimony to be shaped by someone with a vested interest in the outcome. That's tampering. But I didn't lie. You don't have to lie for it to be tampering. You just have to improperly influence the process. Blackwood rubbed his temples. This gets worse, the more I learn. What does that mean for Friday? It means we need Judge Morrison to focus on the contempt and not dig into the potential tampering. Because if he starts investigating that angle, you're facing felony charges. Victoria felt sick. A felony? I could lose my teaching license. You could lose a lot more than that. Friday morning arrived cold and gray. Victoria stood outside the courthouse in a conservative navy suit that Blackwood had insisted she buy. Gone was her typical bold red lipstick, her statement, jewelry, her commanding presence. She thought miserably, like someone defeated. Maybe she was. Blackwood met her at the entrance. Remember, humble, contrite, respectful. I know. Do you? Because the Victoria Chen, who walked out of this courthouse last week, would have laughed at the idea of bowing to anyone. That Victoria needs to be gone. She is. We'll see. They entered the courtroom. It was more crowded than before. Victoria spotted reporters in the back rows. Her stomach dropped. Why are they here? She whispered to Blackwood. Word got out. Beloved teacher faces judge. Makes a good headline, regardless of which way it cuts. Victoria scanned the crowd and saw familiar faces. A few teachers from her school, parents of students. And there, in the third row, Jamie sat with her father. Man Victoria had never met, but had condemned as an unfit parent. Their eyes met. Jamie's expression was impossible to read. Judge Morrison entered. Everyone stood. Victoria's knees felt weak. Ms. Chen, the judge began. You're here for a contempt hearing, but I continued from last week. Before we proceed, I want to confirm that you understand the seriousness of these proceedings. I do, Your Honor, Victoria said, her voice barely above a whisper. Speak up, please. I do, Your Honor, she repeated, louder. Good. Mr. Blackwood, I see you've retained private counsel. Does your client wish to make a statement? Blackwood stood. She does, Your Honor. Judge Morrison nodded. Miss Chen, you may proceed. Victoria stood, her prepared speech suddenly feeling inadequate. She'd rehearsed it dozens of times, but now, facing the judge and the courtroom full of people, the words felt hollow. Your Honor, I want to apologize for my behavior last week. I was disrespectful to you, and to this court. I allowed my emotions about a student's situation to cloud my judgment. I should have complied with the subpoenas. I should have appeared when ordered. I was wrong. Judge Morrison's expression didn't change. Go on. I've spent the past week reflecting on my actions. I realize now that I overstepped my role as a teacher. I had no right to decide what was best for Jamie's custody situation. That's for the courts to determine. I allowed my relationship with her mother to influence me inappropriately. Did you coordinate your testimony with the mother's attorney? Victoria hesitated. Blackwood had warned her that this question might come. Tell the truth, he'd said. Trying to hide it now will only make things worse. Yes, Your Honor. I met with the mother's attorney twice. We discussed what I would say if I testified. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. And did you discuss what you would say with the father's attorney? No, Your Honor. Why not? Because, Victoria swallowed hard. Because I'd already decided the mother should win custody. I thought I was helping. By denying the father access to a potential witness. I didn't think of it that way at the time. Judge Morrison was silent for a long moment. Miss Chen, do you understand that your actions potentially constituted witness tampering? Victoria's voice shook. I do now. Your Honor, do you understand that by ignoring multiple subpoenas, you obstructed a legal proceeding?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you understand that your behavior last week laughing at this court, suggesting you were above the law, showing complete contempt for the judicial process, demonstrated a fundamental lack of respect for the rule of law? Yes, Your Honor. Judge Morrison picked up a document. I've received several letters on your behalf, from students, parents, and colleagues. They all speak very highly of your teaching abilities. They describe you as passionate, dedicated, someone who goes above and beyond for her students. Victoria felt a flicker of hope. They also describe you as someone who always fights for what she believes is right, who never backs down, who stands firm in her convictions. The judge looked up. Those qualities can be admirable in a teacher. They're dangerous in someone who decides they know better than the courts. The hope died. Judge Morrison continued. Miss Chen, I've spent considerable time this week reviewing your case. I've consulted with other judges. I've read the letters. I've considered your apology today, and I've tried to determine what justice requires in this situation. Victoria's hands were clasped so tightly. Her knuckles were white. On one hand, you're clearly someone who cares about her students. Your career suggests you've had a positive impact on many young people. Your remorse today appears genuine. Victoria allowed herself to breathe. On the other hand, you committed not one, but multiple acts of contempt. You violated 4 court orders. You potentially tampered with a witness in a custody case. You showed complete disregard for the legal system, and when given the opportunity to correct your behavior, you instead mocked this court and suggested you were untouchable. The breathing stopped. I asked myself what message it would send if I showed leniency. What would it tell other potential witnesses? What would it tell people in positions of authority who might think their jobs put them above the law? What would it tell your own students about accountability? Judge Morrison set down the document. Miss Chen, I find you guilty of criminal contempt of court. I sentence you to 60 days in county jail. The courtroom exploded with noise. Victoria swayed on her feet. Blackwood grabbed her arm to steady her. However, the judge raised his voice over the commotion. I'm willing to suspend 30 days of that sentence if you complete the following conditions. You will serve 30 days in jail. Immediately. Following your release, you will be on probation for 1 year. During that year, you will complete 200 hours of community service. You will write a formal apology to both parties in the custody case, and you will never contact either party or their attorneys again regarding this case. Victoria's voice came out as a croak. Your Honor. Furthermore, I'm recommending that the state's attorney review your case for potential witness tampering charges. That will be at their discretion. Your Honor, please. Finally, I'm issuing an order that you are not to have any contact with Jamie Martinez during or after your incarceration. Is that clear? Victoria couldn't speak. She nodded. Bailiff, please take Miss Chen into custody. The bailiff approached. Victoria looked at Blackwood with wild eyes. What do I do? You go with him. I'll file an appeal. But Victoria, the chances of success are minimal. You're going to serve that 30 days. But my students' classes, they are no longer your concern right now. The bailiff put handcuffs on Victoria's wrists. The cold metal felt surreal. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't possible. As she was led out of the courtroom, she saw the faces in the crowd. Some showed sympathy. Some showed satisfaction. Most showed shock. She saw Jamie, crying into her father's shoulder. The father was whispering something to her, stroking her hair gently. It was such a tender moment that Victoria felt something crack inside her chest. She'd never given him a chance. Never considered that maybe, just maybe, he was a good father too. In the hallway, reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. Victoria kept her head down, letting the bailiff guide her through the chaos. This was really happening. She was going to jail. The county jail was exactly as miserable as Victoria had imagined. She was processed, photographed, fingerprinted, and given an orange jumpsuit that smelled of industrial detergent. Her personal items were confiscated. Her jewelry, her watch, her wedding ring taken away. They led her to a cell she would share with 2 other women. One was a young woman named Keisha, who'd been arrested for drug possession. The other was an older woman, named Ruth, who'd been convicted of embezzlement. What are you in for? Keisha asked, sizing Victoria up. Contempt of court. Ruth laughed. You mouthed off to a judge. Something like that. Must have been pretty bad. They usually don't lock people up for contempt unless they really ask for it. Victoria lay on the thin mattress that would be her bed for the next 30 days. The ceiling was stained and cracked. She could hear yelling from other cells, the clang of metal doors, and the constant hum of fluorescent lights. This was her life now. Because she'd been too arrogant to show respect to a judge. too convinced of her own righteousness to consider she might be wrong. The first few days were the hardest. Victoria had never felt so powerless. In school, she controlled her classroom. She decided the curriculum, the grades, the pace. Here, she controlled nothing. She ate when told to eat. She slept when the lights went out. She followed orders from guards who didn't care about her 12 years of teaching experience. On the third day, she received a letter from Principal Warren. Her employment had been suspended without pay pending the outcome of her criminal case. The district was reviewing its options for termination. On the fifth day, Helen Martinez, the union rep, sent a brief note explaining that the union could not defend her given the circumstances. She was on her own. Victoria cried for the first time since her arrest. She'd tried to help, and instead, she'd made everything worse. "Hey," Ruth said from her bunk. "You okay?" "I ruined everything. Joined the club. That's why most of us are here. I thought I was helping a student." "What happened?" Victoria told her the whole story. Ruth listened without interrupting. When Victoria finished, Ruth was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You know what your problem was? Tell me. You thought being right gave you permission to break the rules. I did the same thing, embezzled money from my company because I thought I deserved a bigger salary, thought I was smarter than everyone else, thought I'd never get caught. How long are you in for?" 2 years. Already served 6 months. Victoria did the math. She was lucky, relatively speaking. 30 days would be hell, but it would end. She would survive this. She had to. Weeks passed slowly. Victoria fell into the routines of jail life. She worked in the laundry facility, folding sheets for hours each day. She attended mandatory classes on anger management and personal responsibility. She read books from the jail's limited library. And she thought. A lot. She thought about Jamie, wondering how the girl was adjusting to living with her father. She thought about her students, who were probably being taught by a substitute. She thought about her career, which might be over. Mostly, she thought about how she'd gotten here. It hadn't been just a contempt hearing. That was the culmination of years of behavior. She'd always believed she knew best. Always thought her way was the right way. She'd bulldozed over students who disagreed with her. She'd fought with administrators who questioned her methods. She'd made enemies of colleagues who dared to challenge her. And she'd called it passion, dedication, fighting for what's right. But really, it had been arrogance. Victoria Chen, who never backed down. Victoria Chen, who always won. Victoria Chen, who thought tenure and community respect made her untouchable. In the anger management class, the counselor asked each inmate to identify the moment their life went wrong. When Victoria's turn came, she surprised herself with her answer. It wasn't one moment. It was a pattern. Years of thinking I was special. Years of believing the rules didn't fully apply to me because I was doing important work. And now, the counselor asked, now I realize that everyone thinks they're special. Everyone thinks their work is important. The rules exist because without them, we'd all just be making our own decisions about what's right, and chaos would follow. The counselor smiled. That's good insight, Victoria. It was the first time someone had used her first name in weeks. It felt strange, humanizing. On day 23, Victoria received a visitor. She was shocked to see Marcus Webb, her former public defender, sitting across from her in the visitor's room. Marcus? What are you doing here? Checking on you, wanted to see how you were holding up. Why do you care? He shrugged. Because despite everything, I think you're not a bad person. Just someone who lost perspective. Victoria laughed bitterly. That's a generous interpretation. Maybe. But I've seen actual bad people. You're not one of them. You're just someone who let power go to their head. Teacher power. That's almost funny. Power is power. Doesn't matter if you're a teacher, a cop, a CEO, or a judge. When you have it, it changes you. The question is whether you let it corrupt you. I did. Yeah, you did. But you're paying for it now. They talked for the full hour. Aloud, Marcus explained that the state's attorney had reviewed her case for witness tampering, but declined to prosecute. The contempt conviction would stand, but at least she wouldn't face additional charges. What about my teaching license? Victoria asked. That's up to the state education board. They'll review your case after you're released. Do I have a chance? Marcus hesitated. Honestly, it's 50-50. The conviction will hurt. But, if you show genuine rehabilitation, they might let you keep it with conditions. What kind of conditions? Probation, additional training, regular evaluations. You'd be under a microscope. Better than losing it entirely. True. After Marcus left, Victoria returned to her cell, feeling something she hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Small, fragile hope. But hope nonetheless. Day 30 arrived. Victoria was processed out of jail early in the morning. She emerged into sunlight that felt too bright after weeks of fluorescent lighting. Her sister was waiting for her in the parking lot. You look terrible, Linda said, hugging her. Thanks. I feel terrible. They drove in silence for a while. Finally, Linda asked, What now? I don't know. I have community service to complete, probation to serve, and I need to find out if I still have a job. Do you want the job? After everything, Victoria considered the question. Did she? A month ago, the answer would have been an immediate yes. Teaching was her identity, her purpose, her pride. Now, she wasn't sure. I want to teach, she said slowly, but I need to figure out if I should. If I can do it right. Linda nodded. That's mature of you. Jail has a way of forcing maturity. Over the next few weeks, Victoria attended her probation meetings, started her community service at a homeless shelter, and waited to hear from the school district. She avoided social media, where former students and parents were still debating whether her punishment had been too harsh or too lenient. Finally, the letter came. The district was terminating her employment. The education board would hold a hearing in 3 months to determine whether she could keep her teaching license. Victoria read the letter 3 times, then set it down. She didn't cry. She'd cried enough in jail. Instead, she did something she'd never done before. She accepted responsibility without fighting back. She wrote a letter to the school board, explaining that she understood their decision. She wrote a formal apology to Jamie's father. She wrote to Jamie herself, apologizing for overstepping and wishing her well, though she honored the judge's order not to send it. And she started seeing a therapist. Dr. Sarah Kim was a no-nonsense woman in her 40s who specialized in working with people recovering from incarceration. Tell me about your identity, Dr. Kim said in their first session. What do you mean? Who is Victoria Chen? I was a teacher. And now? I don't know. That's the work we need to do. Figuring out who you are beyond your job title. Over months of therapy, Victoria began to unpack the origins of her arrogance. Her parents had been demanding, accepting nothing less than perfection. She'd learned that achievement equaled worth. That being the best meant being safe. Teaching had reinforced that. She was good at it. Students improved under her instruction. Parents praised her. She'd built her entire identity around being an exceptional teacher. But when that identity was threatened by a judge, by a court order, by anything that suggested she wasn't in controls, she'd reacted with fear, disguised as arrogance. You equated compliance with weakness, Dr. Kim observed. Following the court order felt like admitting you weren't exceptional. I never thought of it that way. Most people don't. We're very good at justifying our behavior to ourselves. Victoria completed her community service at the homeless shelter. She found to her surprise that she enjoyed the work. No one there knew her as Teacher of the Year. They just knew her as Victoria, the volunteer who served food and listened to people's stories. One regular, an older man named Frank, told her about losing his teaching job 30 years ago due to alcoholism. Biggest mistake of my life, he said. Not the drinking though, that was bad enough. The mistake was thinking I could handle it alone. That asking for help made me weak. Did you ever get back to teaching? Nope. Lost my license. But I got sober. Found other ways to help people. He gestured around the shelter. Sometimes losing everything is what saves you. Victoria thought about that a lot. 3 months after her release, Victoria appeared before the state education board. The hearing would determine whether she could keep her teaching license. She sat at a table, with a lawyer different one, specializing in professional licensing, while a panel of 5 board members reviewed her case. They asked about the contempt conviction, about her time in jail, about what she'd learned. Victoria answered honestly. She didn't make excuses. She didn't blame anyone else. She simply explained how arrogance had blinded her to her own mistakes. "Miss Chen," one board member asked, "why should we let you keep your license?" "Honestly, I'm not sure you should." The room went silent. For years I told myself I was a great teacher, because my students got good test scores, because parents requested me, because I won awards. But I taught them more than English. I taught them that if you're good enough at something, the rules bend for you. I taught them that authority figures should be respected only when it's convenient. I taught them that being right matters more than being humble. She paused, gathering her thoughts. "Those are terrible lessons. If you decide I shouldn't teach again, I'll accept that. I'll find another way to contribute to society. But if you give me another chance, I promise I'll teach differently. I'll teach that everyone is accountable to something larger than themselves, that humility isn't weakness, that admitting mistakes takes more courage than never making them." Another board member leaned forward. "How can we trust that you've changed?" "You can't. Not completely. Change is a process, not a destination. All I can offer is transparency. Monitor me. Evaluate me regularly. Give me conditions and restrictions. I'll meet every single one." The board deliberated for 2 hours. When they returned, the chairwoman spoke. "Miss Chen, the board has decided to allow you to retain your teaching license, subject to the following conditions. You will be on professional probation for 3 years. You will undergo quarterly evaluations. You will complete additional training in professional ethics and boundaries, and you will not be eligible for any leadership positions, awards, or special recognition during your probationary period." Victoria exhaled. "Thank you. Don't thank us yet. One violation, one complaint, one indication that you haven't learned from this experience, and your license will be permanently revoked. Do you understand?" "I do." Victoria didn't return to Roosevelt High School. That door was closed, and she accepted it. Instead, she took a position at Jefferson Middle School, teaching 8th grade English for significantly less money and no tenure protection. Her classroom on the first day was half the size of her previous one. No reserved parking spot, no Teacher of the Year plaques on the wall, just desks, books, and students. "Hi," she said to her first class. "I'm Miss Chen. I'm going to be honest with you. This is a second chance for me. I made serious mistakes in my previous teaching position. I let my ego get in the way of my judgment. I'm here to do better." The students stared at her. Teachers didn't usually start the year by admitting to failures. "I'm telling you this because I want you to understand something. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is what you do after. Do you learn? Do you change? Or do you make excuses and blame others?" One student raised his hand. "What kind of mistakes?" "The kind that landed me in jail for a month." Gasps rippled through the room. Victoria spent the next 20 minutes explaining, in age-appropriate terms, what had happened. How she'd thought she knew better than a judge. How she'd paid the price for her arrogance. "So why should we listen to you?" another student asked. "Because I'm teaching you more than English. I'm teaching you about accountability, about humility, about the importance of respecting systems, even when you disagree with them." She paused. "And because, despite everything, I still believe in the power of education. I still believe books and words and ideas can change lives. I just had to learn that teachers are students too. We're all always learning." The year was hard. Victoria's ego wanted to slip back into old patterns. When a parent criticized her grading, her first instinct was to fight back. When the principal questioned one of her lesson plans, she wanted to assert her 12 years of experience. But she didn't. She listened. She adjusted. She accepted that she was under a microscope, and that every action mattered. Her students noticed the difference. They weren't afraid of her the way students at Roosevelt had sometimes been. They respected her, but they also felt safe disagreeing with her. One day, a student named Marcus, coincidentally sharing her former lawyers, challenged her interpretation of a novel. "I think you're wrong, Miss Chen," he said. "The author isn't saying what you think." Old Victoria would have shut him down, would have used her authority to end the debate. New Victoria smiled. "Tell me why you think that." They debated for 10 minutes. The class participated enthusiastically. In the end, Victoria admitted that Marcus had made several excellent points that she hadn't considered. "You know what?" she said. "I think you might be right. Thank you for pushing back." After class, Marcus approached her. "My teachers never admit when they're wrong." "Then you've had the wrong teachers." Word spread. Victoria Chen, the teacher who'd gone to jail, was different from other teachers. She was strict but fair, demanding but humble. She expected excellence but admitted her own imperfections. By the end of the year, her student evaluations were good. Not spectacular, but solid. Several parents specifically commented on how much their children had learned about character and integrity, not just English. It wasn't the recognition Victoria once craved, but it was meaningful in a way that awards had never been. 2 years after her release from jail, Victoria was sitting in her classroom after school when someone knocked on her door. She looked up to see a teenager she almost didn't recognize. Jamie. The girl was taller now, her hair longer. She looked healthy and confident. "Hi, Miss Chen. I hope it's okay that I came by." "Of course. Come in." Victoria's heart raced. "How did you find me?" "I asked around." "It took a while." Jamie sat at one of the desks. "I wanted to talk to you." "Jamie, I'm under a court order. That expired last month." I checked. Victoria relaxed slightly. "How are you?" "Good. Actually, living with my dad has been really good." "I'm glad." Jamie was quiet for a moment. "I was angry at you for a long time. You had every right to be. I thought you were trying to help my mom, but then I realized you were just trying to be in control. You didn't actually know what was best for me." Victoria nodded. "You're absolutely right. My dad is a good parent. He's not perfect, but neither is my mom. They're both good in different ways. I should have trusted the courts to figure that out."
"Yeah, you should have."
Jamie looked around the classroom. "Is this where you teach now?" "It is." "Do you miss your old school?" Victoria considered the question. "Sometimes I miss the familiarity, the resources we had, but I don't miss who I was there." "Who were you?" "Someone who thought she was always right. Someone who couldn't see past her own certainty." Jamie nodded slowly. "My mom is still kind of like that. She still doesn't think she did anything wrong." "I'm sorry to hear that. She says you got a bad deal, that the judge was too harsh." Victoria smiled sadly. "I got exactly what I deserved." "Really?" "Really. I needed to learn a hard lesson about humility, about respecting the law, about understanding that good intentions don't excuse bad behavior." She paused. "I'm sorry, Jamie. For everything." "I know. I read the apology you sent my dad." "Did he show it to you?" "Eventually. He wanted me to decide when I was ready." Jamie stood up. "I just wanted to tell you that I forgive you, and that I hope you're doing okay." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you. That means more than you know." After Jamie left, Victoria sat alone in her classroom for a long time. The sun was setting, casting orange light across the desks. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. The arrogance, the fall, the rebuilding. She thought about Judge Morrison, who had seen through her bluster and given her exactly what she needed. Consequences. Real meaningful consequences that forced her to confront herself. She thought about the students she was teaching now. The lessons are about more than just English. The example she was trying to set. And she thought about the person she'd been, and the person she was becoming. Victoria Chen would never be Teacher of the Year again. She would never have a parking spot with her name on it. She would never be the teacher that parents requested above all others. But she was a better teacher now than she'd ever been before. Not because of what she knew, but because of what she'd learned. That excellence without humility is just arrogance in disguise. That respect for systems, even imperfect ones, is essential to civilization. That no one, no matter their profession or achievements, is above the law. The hardest lessons, she'd discovered, are often the most valuable ones. Victoria was grading essays one Thursday afternoon when Principal Andrea Mills stopped by her classroom. 3 years at Jefferson, and Victoria had learned to appreciate Andrea's straightforward management style, different from the political maneuvering at Roosevelt. Victoria, you have a visitor in the main office, Andrea said. A parent? Not exactly, he asked for you specifically. Victoria's stomach tightened. Unexpected visitors still made her nervous. She followed Andrea to the office, mentally running through possibilities. Had she made some mistake? Violated some rule she didn't know about? But when she entered the conference room, she found Judge Morrison sitting at the table. Her breath caught. She hadn't seen him since the day of her sentencing, 5 years ago. Your Honor, she said, her voice uncertain. He stood and extended his hand. Miss Chen, thank you for agreeing to see me. They shook hands. His grip was firm but not aggressive. Andrea quietly closed the door, leaving them alone. Please, sit, Judge Morrison said. Victoria sat, her mind racing. Is something wrong? Am I in violation of something? No, nothing like that. He smiled slightly. You look surprised. I am. I never expected to see you again. I've been following your progress. Through official channels, of course. Your probation reports. Your evaluations. Why? Judge Morrison leaned back. Because I wanted to know if I'd made the right decision. The right decision? Sending you to jail, instead of just imposing a fine. It was a calculated risk. Some people break under that kind of punishment. They come out bitter, broken, unable to rebuild. Others come out transformed. Victoria processed this. You were testing me. I was giving you an opportunity. There's a difference. He pulled a folder from his briefcase. I've read your quarterly evaluations. Every single one mentions your growth, your humility, your changed approach to teaching. Your students respect you. Their parents trust you. You're doing good work. Thank you. Don't thank me. You did the work. I just provided the catalyst. He paused. I'm here because I'd like to offer you something. Victoria tensed. What kind of something? I'm partnering with the County Bar Association on a new program. We want to bring legal education into middle schools. Teach students about the judicial system, their rights, and how courts work. We need teachers to help develop the curriculum and lead the classes. You want me to teach kids about the legal system? Victoria couldn't hide her disbelief. I want you to teach them what you learned. About accountability. About respecting the law, even when it's inconvenient. About the consequences of thinking you're above the system. That's ironic. Considering I'm the one who showed contempt for your court. That's exactly why you're perfect for this. You're not some theoretical expert. You lived the consequences. You can speak authentically about what happens when arrogance meets justice. Victoria sat back, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. We're launching a pilot program next semester. It would be one class period, twice a week. You'd work directly with attorneys and judges to develop lessons. We'd compensate you for the additional time. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you really come here? You could have sent an email, had someone else recruit me. Judge Morrison was quiet for a moment. Because I wanted to see for myself if the Victoria Chen sitting in front of me is different from the one who stood in my courtroom 5 years ago. And you are, completely. He stood. The woman I sentenced wouldn't have asked that question. She would have assumed she deserved this opportunity. She would have seen it as vindication, proof that she'd been right all along. Victoria felt the truth of his words. Old Victoria would have preened at the offer, would have seen it as confirmation that the judge had been wrong to punish her so harshly. New Victoria saw it differently. I need to think about it, she said. Not because I don't appreciate the opportunity, but because I need to make sure I'm doing it for the right reasons. Judge Morrison smiled. That's the answer I was hoping for. He handed her a business card. Call me when you've decided. No pressure. If this doesn't feel right, we'll find someone else. After he left, Victoria sat alone in the conference room. She thought about Jamie, who had forgiven her, about Frank, from the homeless shelter, who'd lost everything and found a different path, about Marcus Webb, who'd checked on her in jail when he had no reason to. She thought about the students she taught now. The ones who saw her as more than just an English teacher. The ones who'd learned that adults could admit mistakes and change. Could she teach them about justice? About the law? Could she stand in front of a classroom and explain how the system had held her accountable. More importantly, should she? Victoria pulled out her phone and called Dr. Kim, her therapist. "I need an emergency session," she said. "Something happened, and I need to talk through it before I make a decision. Can you come in tomorrow morning? I'll be there." That night, Victoria couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the judge's visit, about the program he'd described, about standing in front of students and saying, "This is what happened when I thought I was above the law." Part of her was terrified, part of her was excited, part of her wondered if she was really ready for this kind of responsibility. At 2 a.m, she got up and made tea. She pulled out a notebook and started writing. Not lesson plans, just thoughts. What would I tell students about the judicial system? That it's not perfect, but it's necessary. That judges are human beings, trying to apply laws fairly. That respecting the courts isn't about agreeing with every decision's about accepting that society needs rules and consequences. What would I tell them about my experience? That I was wrong. That I let my ego convince me I knew better than everyone else. That I paid a price, but that price gave me something valuable. Perspective. What would I want them to learn? That authority isn't about powers, about responsibility. That being right doesn't excuse being disrespectful. That humility is strength, not weakness. Victoria wrote for 2 hours. When she finally stopped, she had pages of notes, ideas for lessons, ways to make legal concepts accessible to 8th graders, stories from her own experience that might help them understand why the law matters. She also had clarity. The next morning, she met with Dr. Kim. "Tell me what happened," Dr. Kim said. Victoria explained everything: the judge's visit, the program, and her conflicted feelings. "What are you afraid of?" Dr. Kim asked. "That I'll fall back into old patterns. That having a judge validate my rehabilitation will make me arrogant again. That I'll start thinking I've arrived instead of remembering I'm still on the journey." "Those are valid fears. What makes you want to do it?" "Because maybe I can prevent someone else from making my mistakes. Maybe some kid will hear my story and think twice before deciding they're above the rules. Maybe I can do some good with what I learned." Dr. Kim smiled. "You just answered your own question. But what if I fail? What if I'm not ready?" "Victoria, 5 years ago, you thought you had all the answers. Now you're questioning whether you're ready. That's growth. That's exactly why you should do this." Victoria called Judge Morrison that afternoon. "I'll do it," she said, "but I need you to promise me something." "What's that?" "If you see me slipping back into old habits, if I start getting arrogant or thinking I'm special because of this program, you'll call me out." Immediately. There was a long pause. Then Judge Morrison said, "You have my word. Then I'm in. Welcome to the team, Miss Chen. I think you're going to do excellent work." After hanging up, Victoria sat at her desk and looked around her small classroom. No awards on the walls. No special parking spot. No tenure protection. But she had something better. Purpose without pride. Expertise without arrogance. A second chance she'd earned through genuine change. Judge Morrison had been right 5 years ago. She'd needed justice to hit hard, and now, transformed by that impact, she was ready to help others understand why it mattered. The irony wasn't lost on her. The teacher who'd mocked the judge would now work alongside him, teaching the next generation about respect, accountability, and the rule of law. Sometimes Victoria thought, justice doesn't just punish, it redeems. Victoria Chen stood in front of a new group of 8th graders on the first day of school, her 6th year at Jefferson Middle School. She was off probation now, her license fully restored without conditions.
"Hi," she said. "I'm Miss Chen. Before we start, I want to tell you about a mistake I made."
She told her story every year, not for sympathy or absolution, but as a teaching tool, as proof that accountability matters, as evidence that people can change. Some students rolled their eyes. Some listened intently. Some didn't care. That was okay. Victoria wasn't trying to be the most popular teacher anymore. She was trying to be honest, effective, humble. On her desk, where Teacher of the Year plaques had once sat, there was now a single framed quote. The measure of a person is not how they handle success, but how they rise after failure. She'd learned that lesson the hard way. In a courtroom, in a jail cell, in the painful process of rebuilding a shattered identity. But she'd learned it. And now, every day, she taught it to students who had no idea how much that lesson had cost her, or how much it was worth. Justice, it turned out, wasn't about punishment. It was about transformation. Judge Morrison had understood that. He'd given her exactly what she needed, a fall hard enough to break through her arrogance, but not so hard that she couldn't rebuild. For that and for everything that followed, Victoria Chen was finally genuinely grateful.